Welcome to the Good Intention Show, coming to you live on the UI Radio Network. The Good Intention Show is sponsored by the United Intentions Foundation at unitedintentions.org, a virtual community where you learn to create, track, and manifest your passions one intention at a time. Look for us on Blog Talk, Spreaker, iTunes, Stitcher, Player FM, and many more. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram under United Intentions and on Twitter at Higher Intention. Yes, this is the Good Intention Show, where you will meet people who live life intentionally and hear about things they're not telling you in the mainstream media. And now, here's the truth seeker, the snake charmer, a legend in his own mind, broadcasting live all over the universe, your host, Mr. Tim Ray.
There it is. All right. Jennifer, woohoo, celebration time, huh?
I know, we're so excited.
Why do you think we're celebrating today?
Let's see. We have Dr. Bruce Lipton on with us.
Well, you would think that alone would be the reason why I'd want to celebrate. And that is, of course, you have an internationally renowned scientist and spiritual guide for millions. But there's a little more to that.
Yes, our site is getting ready to relaunch.
Not even that. You know what the real big issue is?
What is it?
That our energetic frequency is vibrating at a similar rate as Dr. Bruce Lipton's. Otherwise, he wouldn't be here today. at least for the next hour, he is, Yeah. So to me, that is what I'm celebrating about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The power of manifestation in the raw is happening right now, right here.
Yes, everything we talk about.
Yes, this was my intention. If you remember, my intention back in the old site when we had it was to, of course, meet Dr. Bruce Lipton, which I did. I already did that last year. And then, of course, now we're having the show. And I now have to go back and click on, I realize this intention. And I click on that on the site and go back and do that.
Yes,
so
and it's just so great because a lot of what you based your site on is based on what he found and all of his scientific research. So. Well,
not to get too mushy here, but I met Dr. Bruce Lipton at Celebrate Life last year, at the event they have every year. And I had an opportunity to speak with him, briefly walking from the elevator. He left the book signing to the elevator. And I had to, say his energy was so calming and peaceful. It was like naturally humbling. I guess if I want to describe the word, it was very graceful. And, and I met Joe Dispenza, I met Dan Millman, I met a bunch of people, and they were fantastic. Everybody was fantastic. But he seemed to have such a unique energy around him that was, I was a stranger. And I'm here, I could be a stalker or something, Dr. Britt Lipton, you stop in the elevator, And he just turned around and he was just so graceful with me and he let me explain a little about what we're doing with the United Intentions Foundation. I gave him, a little pamphlet he put up together for us. Mm-hmm. And he showed real genuine interest in it to the point where, and he didn't even know then he was a catalyst and inspiration for the foundation. He had no idea. He was that's his personality, how he comes across. And much of, like you said, much of the foundation discoveries, or much of the foundation is based on his discoveries and insight. But most gratefully, he stopped. We were talking, right? And he made it a point. He made it a point and mentioned, contact my business manager. I believe it's Sally, right? Mm-hmm. Contact my business manager and let her know that I will be on your Good Intentions radio show. And it wasn't like, oh yeah, I'll be on the Good Intentions radio show. And he'd walk up. He stopped. It was like everything in the present moment, everything just slows down, and I just felt this energy oh my God, he's serious. He really will be, and it was just really, it was an amazing experience.
Let me come here to your show.
And now you know the rest of the story. So let me tell listeners about this gentleman, Dr. Bruce Lipton here, a little bit about him, and now I'll introduce him. He's Bruce H. Lipton, Ph.D., bestseller author of The Biology of Belief. And the H, what do you think the H is? We'll ask him. I think it's Harry. What do you think it is?
I have no idea.
Henry? Harry? What do you
think?
Right.
We can ask him.
If he wants. He may be one of those little names you don't want anybody to know, So he's a cellular biologist, former associate professor of the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine. His pioneering research on clone stem cells at Wisconsin presaged the revolutionary field of epigenetics. Basically, this guy created a whole new field of science, or led to it, and now the new science of how environment and perception control genes. His later research at Stanford University School of Medicine revealed the nature of biochemical pathways and the bridge to the mind-body duality. You can reach Dr. Bruce Lipton at brucelipton.com. So without further ado, let me welcome Dr. Bruce Lipton. Hello.
Hey, gosh, thanks a lot for letting me be on your show. Hi, Jennifer. I didn't meet you there, but I'm so glad you're here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes. How exciting it is. And, you want me to call you Dr. Bruce, or what would you feel most comfortable with?
No, just Bruce is a good one.
All right. Just call me Bruce. Is that like a movie or something? All right. So many questions, and I really, I don't want to be selfish here, Dr. or Bruce, but I have so many questions really, and I know a lot of our listeners here, and I'm going to kind of advance our conversation a little bit too as we go forward, because a lot of them know your basic work, and a lot of our listeners are just kind of want to get a little more into about you and perhaps your state of being in mind as well, which I do as well, because you've been such a mentor, and not that we don't want to talk more about. Like, I have a couple of questions about your history and what you've done and the cell research and everything. But my first question I really want to ask is, I read actually your actual experiments you did back in the 80s with the discovery of the cell brain being located in the cell membrane and not the in the nucleus. However, I mean, I got the gist of it, but I'm not a scientist, and I'll tell you, some of those words were pretty big. And and I was waiting for this in the abstract. I was waiting for this excitement of understanding, describing the revolutionary discovery that you did. But I was hoping that you would be able to, you could share maybe your state of mind, or even take us back, even better yet, take us back to where you were there again and walk us through the moment when you realized the impact of this discovery and how it would transform biological science across other science forever.
Oh, transformed Bruce first thing right away. It was, listen, I was a scientist because and growing up, there were two pathways. You could walk a spiritual pathway or a scientific pathway, because it didn't seem to be the same pathway. And what helped me choose the science was that I've listened to a lot of people as a kid that were so-called spiritual people. They had the beautiful words and nice talk, but as a kid, I could even see it's like, well, their lives don't match their words in any sense. It's like they can spout some good words, but it doesn't seem to manifest. So I sort of lost interest in that right away, and really gravitated towards science, because science is based on truths that are, if it's true on this side of the world, it's true on the other side of the world, because it's a scientific truth based on validation, et cetera. So science seemed to be more truthful than spirituality. So I left behind the concept of spirituality, bought into the conventional science, which is the story of evolution and genes and Darwin and the whole thing like that. Ended up becoming actually a professor and teaching that to medical students. And yet at the same time, I was working on stem cells, and people have to recognize that I was working on stem cells before most of you were born. I was working on stem cells in 1967. There were only a handful of us in the entire world that even knew what a stem cell was at that time. And what was so exciting was that it was a unique opportunity. Stem cells are these embryonic cells that we find in our body as adults. And you say, well, why should I have embryonic cells in my body as an adult? And the answer is fundamentally very important, and that is, a human body is made out of about 50 trillion cells. That's obviously a number that's easy to say, but to comprehend that number is way out of our mind. And we're a community of cells. And what's interesting is every day in a daily life, just average, every day, all of us are losing hundreds of billions, with a B, hundreds of billions of cells die every day. Normal attrition. They have a life, they die. But the thing is, of course, we stay alive no matter how many cells die every day, because we replace the cells that die every day, and that's what stem cells are for. Our body is filled with these embryonic cells. Their function is to help replace the cells that we lose on a daily basis. So every one of us is growing every day, whether we're a kid or an adult. You have to grow, and stem cells are the source. They're embryonic cells. And I'm teaching at the same time I'm doing work on stem cells. Medical students, I'm teaching them the conventional story about genes controlling life, and how genes provide for our characteristics, and this is the conventional story that was being told in medical school at the time. Let me emphasize what's really important about that story, and that is this. in the story, which we teach doctors, which then tell patients, the story is this, is that the genes program the character of our lives, not just our physical character, but apparently the genes were involved with our emotional and our behavioral characteristics. And I say, well, okay, cool, but what's the point? And the point is simply this. As far as we know, we didn't pick the genes we came with. And if we don't like the traits we have, well, we can't change the genes. And I go, well, what is the conclusion of this story? And it's like a very sad conclusion, because it says we are controlled by genes and we don't control the genes. Therefore, we are victims of our heredity, meaning, oh, my God, there's cancer running in the family, and I could get the cancer gene, then I'm going to get the cancer, and the cancer is going to turn on, the gene will turn on, and all this stuff, and I am a victim. Unfortunate. Because when you tell somebody they're a victim, first thing you've done is disempowered them. Because you say, well, since you're a victim, there's nothing you can do about it, but we'll fix you. Well, the we'll fix you is the pharmaceutical industry, which to me is a horror, if you want me to get down to the absolute truth.
Absolutely, I'm with you 100%.
It's a manipulation. It's a manipulation. It says, you can't fix yourself, we can fix you, and I'm going to charge you whatever the hell I want. And that's why
we'll make you sick and then make money off it too.
Well, okay, you want to get to a fact, a wake-up fact, and that is this. Medicine is, and by their own acknowledgement, I'm not making this up, medicine, as an article published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, acknowledges medicine is the third leading cause of death in the United States.
Absolutely.
Now, there's some question about that, because in the article in the Journal of the American Medical Association, their statistics were based on what they call conservative estimates. When other scientists got together and said, well, give me the real numbers, don't give me the estimates, it came down that medicine is perhaps the leading cause of death in the United States, with the drug pharmaceutical industry leading that, with over 300,000 people dying every year from prescription drugs. Which is really interesting, because we talk about, illegal drugs, the bad drugs. And I go, the bad drugs kill 20,000 or 30,000 people a year. Medicine kills up to 300,000, 400,000 people a year.
It is out of control. You're absolutely right.
It's out of control. But I love the excuse. You know what the excuse? So you come down to the bottom line and say, well, give me your excuse for this. And I say, that's the cost of doing medicine. That's the cost of doing medicine. Well, then obviously I'm not really looking for your help anymore, which is one of the things that led me out. Okay, so, hey, we're going to round story here, but the whole round story is this. I'm teaching victimization. I'm taking people's power away by telling medical students that their lives are not in their control, but genes control them. And people have heard a gene turns on and a gene turns off and a gene controls. First of all, this is completely false. This is the most false thing in the whole world, meaning genes are self-actualizing, meaning genes make decisions and genes turn on and off. This is so false. And yet we bought it and we buy it, and therefore many people walk every day like a ticking time bomb, going, geez, I got a cancer gene, and one of these days that cancer gene's going to turn on, and then I'm going to get cancer, and they're fearing.
My mom had it, so I'm going to have it.
Exactly. Yeah. The Angelina Jolie story is like, oh, my goodness, my mom had the breast cancer, my grandma, my aunt, and therefore I'm going to get it. So what I'm going to do is have a double mastectomy and to prevent a future possibility. And she had the BRCA1 gene. And let's just, here's a little simple reality nobody talks about, and that is, the BRCA1, the breast cancer gene 1 gene, is one of the primary, factors controlling cancer. And it goes like this. First of all, that's false for a simple reason. Only 50% of the women that have the so-called cancer gene ever get the cancer. And I say, well, what does that mean? I go, well, wait a minute. You mentioned the word BRCA1 gene to a woman like Angelina Jolie, and the first thing she does is go have a double mastectomy because she says, I have the cancer gene. And I go, yeah, but only 50% of the women that have the gene get the cancer. And I say, well, what's relevant about that? And I said, well, we study the 50% that get the cancer. I want to know more specifically, what about the 50% that have the gene and don't get the cancer? That's the more important side of the story. Well, that's not discussed because who wants to discuss health when you could, talk about disease, So basically it says this. Let's give a first scientific reality wake-up call at this moment, and that is this. A gene is a molecular blueprint. It's the equivalent of a blueprint in an architect's office. A gene is a blueprint to make a protein. A protein is a building block of the body. It's a physical building block. So when you look in the mirror and see yourself, your physical structure, that's due to the proteins. The proteins are the building blocks, but the genes are the blueprints to make the building blocks. Okay, so I say, well, what's great about that? And I say, it's a blueprint. You go into an architect's office. She's working on a blueprint. You lean over this architect's shoulder and you ask her, is your blueprint on or off? And she looks at you like, what, are you crazy? It's a blueprint. It's not on and off. I go, precisely, exactly. What's the point? DNA is a blueprint. It has no on and off capacity. It does not make decisions. It does not control itself. It does not control you. It does not turn itself on or off. And I say, well, wait a minute. The whole belief system is genes are controlling my life. And I go, totally false. 100% scientifically, totally false. Genes do not make decisions. Genes are controlled by signals from the environment. And more importantly, genes in the human are controlled via the nervous system by not just the environment, but our perception of the environment. And you say, what does that mean? I say, you could live in the healthiest environment in the whole world and have a perception that this is a toxic environment. And I say, well, what would be the consequence? I say, well, your cells in your body will respond as if the environment is toxic, even though the environment is perfectly healthy. And I say, well, why did it do that? Because my brain sent signals to the cells saying, oh, scary, toxic environment, and it wasn't. And I go, yeah, but the cells inside don't see the environment. They only see what your cells and the nervous system are telling them. And all of a sudden it says, oh, then your perceptions may not match reality. I go, most of the times, no. But the problem is your perceptions ultimately control your genetics and your biology. And this becomes really critical because, yes, Jennifer.
I would just had a quick question. So, like, whenever you view a situation, so let's say three people view the same situation. Everyone's going to perceive it differently based on what they've learned in their lives and everything. So that kind of what you're saying?
100%. 100% for this reason. Two identical twins with essentially identical genetics respond to life in a different way. One ends up with cancer and the other one doesn't.
Right.
They both have the same genes.
Well, that's the big lie. That's the big lie.
That's the problem.
Yeah, that's the big lie.
Listen,
the big lie is that they said, I grew up, 50% nature, 50% nurture, but it's really 5% nature, 95% nurture.
It's pretty much at that level right now. And so why is that important? Because it says if it's nurture, that means you can do something about it. And since we now know that it's the environment and our perception that control genes, then I just ask a person a simple question. Can you alter or change your environment? And can you alter and change your perception? The answer, of course I can do that. Then I say, well, then all of a sudden, then you are not the victim of your genetics. You are the master, because it's the way you respond to the world that activates your genetics and rewrites your genetics. You can change your genetics. It's how you see the world. And so it becomes very important for us to recognize, number one, genetics are only responsible for about 1% of disease. And you go, wait a minute, then where the heck is all the disease coming from? And the answer is lifestyle and environment. And why is that relevant? And the answer is because since we can change lifestyle and since we can change environment, then we're not victims. We're potential masters, except if you have no knowledge of this. And let's back up. Most important phrase in history here: knowledge is power. Mm-hmm. Well, yes, I've heard that, but let's twist it around and say the same thing in a different way, and that is a lack of knowledge is a lack of power. If you have been deprived of the knowledge of how your biology works, then by definition, you have a lack of power in your life. Now, the reality is also important, is that moneyed interests know this story. And moneyed interests in making money don't care about you having power at all. As a matter of fact,
they don't want you to have
the
power.
more they can,
yeah.
No, because if you have power, then why should you buy the pharmaceutical drugs, which are lethal in most cases anyway?
Exactly.
And the idea is, no, just keep you in the dark. This drug, and I advertised it 20 times in the last hour on television, is the drug you need to make your life. And they look at the picture and you go, yeah, I want to be that happy person. What drug was that? Okay, I'm going to go to my doctor and tell my doctor I need this drug, which was the whole idea of advertising drugs.
Right.
And the reason is because they used to advertise to the doctors by giving them money and giving them free trips and vacations and saying, yeah, push our drugs. Then they found, you know what? Bypass the doctor, put it on television, make the ad that, elicits that emotional response. Yeah, oh, God, I need that drug. Yeah. And guess what? The patient will sell the drug, not the doctor. The patient goes in and says, doctor, I need this drug. And all of a sudden, and then the joke, here's the joke. Then what's the doctor in this case? And the answer is a drug dealer.
Yeah, literally. You're absolutely right. A drug
absolutely.
Dealer. And,
great way to look at it.
Especially with kids now, too, pushing the Adderall and everything else. But, I know, right?
A crime.
And they're the worst
against humanity.
Right. It is crimes against humanity. It really is. I'm glad to see your passion in that. One of the things I want to ask you about in academia, because even you talk about it, and this is where, like you said, whoever has power has control. The academia, and even our education arena, they're 15, 30 years behind. Like, for example, I still, with my science teachers, or my kids' science teachers, they still think the brain of the cell is located in the nucleus to this day. And the books are even somewhere reflecting that. And this has been 30 years since and epigenetics is booming. I mean, it's already around.
And the new science is a whole new science. It's called signal transduction. Signal transduction is the science of how environmental signals, or signals from the brain in perception, how signals control biology. Well, in that flow of information, the gene is at the end of the flow.
Right.
Between the environment and the gene is the cell membrane, which reads the signals and then engages the functions in response to the signals. So the membrane of the cell is reading environment and then adjusting the biology to meet the demands of the environment. The genes are passive. They're just programs. And it's interesting because in the old days, well, in current days for most people who are uneducated in this, the genes are the source of control, as we talked about. And as I said, and that belief system is the one that says you have no power, but if you buy these drugs, you can control it. And that's a belief system. And it turns out, well, it's totally wrong. That we can change the genes in our body, that every gene in our body, we can make several thousand variations on the expression of every gene in our body based on how we respond to the world. And I go, wow, that's really true. And it's like, and it's interesting because it says it's mind over body. And then we go, oh, this is new agey. And I go, this is not new agey. This is hardcore science, my friend.
Doc, my understanding there was some Russian experiments done that shows how each type of thought waves has their own unique properties, such as like higher frequency or positive thoughts waves would have shorter frequencies, but lower or negative thought waves would have longer frequencies. And my understanding is the reason why is because it's important to know that this affects our DNA differently, or at least triggers different parts of our DNA, which then affects our ability to rewrite new DNA or not rewrite new DNA. Is that accurate? And can you speak to that?
Well, basically, let me explain how simple the mind-body thing is, so that we can get out of the new agey concept about it. Okay, and it goes like this. I was cloning stem cells. I said stem cells are embryonic cells. They're multipotential. They can become what is needed. When cells in your body die, you replace them with the progeny of the stem cells. So I say stem cell is an embryonic cell. I put one stem cell in a culture dish. This is what I did in 1967. I put one stem cell in a culture dish, and I say, well, what's the relevance? I say, well, the cell divides every 10 or 12 hours. So first there's one cell, then after 10 hours there's two cells, and after 20 hours there's four, and it doubles, and after a week, 50,000 cells in the Petri dish. Yeah, but what is the most important point about this, and that is they all came from the same parent cell. Point. I have 50,000 genetically identical cells in a Petri dish. I go, great. I said, now what about the experiment? I say, I split the cells, genetically identical cells, into 3 different Petri dishes, and I change the composition of the culture medium. That's the stuff I synthesize to grow cells in a tissue culture. The cells are like fish. They grow in a fluid environment. I got to create culture medium. You say, well, what is a culture medium? I go, it's the equivalent of blood. If I grow human cells, I look at human blood, its composition. I try to make a synthetic version of that and feed it to the cells in a culture dish. If I grow mouse cells, I look at mouse blood composition and do likewise to grow mouse cells. So culture medium is the synthetic equivalent of blood, okay? Now here's what the whole story comes down to, and this is what changed my life. I have genetically identical cells in 3 dishes, but I changed the chemical composition of the culture medium. I changed the equivalent of the blood, the chemistry of the blood. And I go, in one dish, the cells form muscle. In a second dish, the cells form bone. And in a third dish, the cells form fat cells. And I say, question, what's responsible for controlling the fate of the cells? Now, the first thing is this. All the cells were genetically identical. So you can't say that the genes in one culture were different than the genes in the other culture. No, they all have the same genes. So I said, then what is it that controls the fate of the cell? And the answer was the chemical composition of the culture medium, the equivalent of blood, the environment in which cells live. Change the environment, change the fate of the cells. And you go, okay, great. That's a cool experiment about cells in a plastic Petri dish. And then I go, okay, now let's turn the thing around and make the joke. And the joke is this. We look in the mirror. We see ourselves. I say, oh, there's one individual. I look. I say, oh, there's Bruce, one organism. I go, misperception. Point. Bruce and every one of us is made out of about 50 trillion cells. The cells are the living entity. When you say the word Bruce, by definition, you're talking about a community of 50 trillion cells. The term Bruce is a term that covers a community. Bruce is not a single organism. He's made out of 50 trillion cells. Point. And the funny part, if you think about it, a human is a skin-covered Petri dish with 50 trillion cells inside. So under your skin, you're a culture dish. You got 50 trillion cells. I go, yeah. And guess what? You got culture medium. Yeah. And guess what? The chemical composition of your culture medium, the blood, controls the genetics and the behavior of the cell, just like it did in a plastic dish. So it doesn't make a difference if the cell's in a plastic dish or a skin dish. It still responds to the chemistry of the culture medium, and in the case of the human body, it's the blood. Now we're coming down to the most important part, because what did we find out in the first study? The chemical composition of the culture medium controlled the fate of the cells. I go, absolutely. Then I say, okay, and what about the 50 trillion cells in my body? I say, well, it's dependent on the chemical composition of my blood. Then I go, okay, who controls or what controls the chemistry of the blood? Okay, step 1, the brain is the chemist. It adds hormones and growth factors and cytokines, agents of the immune system, et cetera, to make the blood. So the brain is mixing the composition of the blood. Now the last, and this is the part that's like, oh my God, the question is, so what chemistry should the brain put into the blood? And then all of a sudden the answer comes. It says, what perceptions or belief do you hold about life? Simple, just simple thing. Right. We're sitting there. We're looking. Our eyes are closed. We open up our eyes, and we see someone we love in front of us. And I go, oh, the mind sees someone I love and interprets, I love that person. Mind interpretation. Point. In response to the interpretation of love, the brain releases love chemicals into the blood, which include dopamine, which is pleasure. That's why you feel good around your lover. Okay, oxytocin, which is a chemical that induces bonding with the source of love. So that's what keeps you tied to your friend. Vasopressin, a chemical that makes you more attractive so that your friend is keeping an interest in you because of your attractiveness. And growth hormone is released when a person experiences love. And that's why when people are in love, they say, oh, look, you can see they're in love. See how they glow? See how healthy they are? And all of a sudden it's like, yeah, that's because the chemistry released by the brain into the culture medium of blood is chemistry based on love and health and happiness. Okay, same person that we were just talking about, sitting there, eyes closed, but this time opens their eyes and sees something that scares them. You're not going to release the chemistry of love into the brain. No dopamine, no oxytocin, vasopressin, growth hormone. That's not going in. When you see something that scares you, your mind interprets fear. Guess what? It releases stress hormones into the blood, inflammatory agents that affect the immune system. I say, oh, the composition of the culture medium changes every time I change the image in my mind. I go, yes. And the idea about that is your mind is creating your life, and therefore your mind is going to tell 50 trillion cells in the body how to do whatever they're supposed to do or create whatever they're supposed to create by releasing the chemistry into the blood. And all of a sudden I say, oh, mind-body, that's not New Age. That's absolute direct chemistry. Your perception is translated into chemistry, which then makes controls your biology.
That's actually a scientific fact that our perception affects our DNA, right?
And so all of a sudden, this is not New Age. It had nothing to do with New Age. It's direct chemistry. Your thoughts adjust the chemistry of your blood to make your cells match your thoughts. You know what? In my lectures lately, one of the things I say is like, most of us at some point when we were young played with paint by numbers. You get a little picture with an outline, and all these little numbers are in the outline, and then the numbers reflect a different color paint. And so you take your paintbrush and you fill in the colors with the numbers, the numbers with the right colors, and then you become Picasso. So here's simplest reality of our life right here, and that is this. Human biology is paint by numbers in reverse, meaning first you create the picture in your mind. Is it something you love, something you fear, whatever it is? And then what does the mind do? Breaks the picture down into numbers. But the numbers are neurochemicals, hormones, and factors from the brain. And I say, then what? Well, those go into the body and adjust the physical body. To do what? Match the picture. A picture of fear leads to a protection response in the body. A picture of love leads to a growth response in the body. And all of a sudden I say, oh, well then your life, biologically, is totally a consequence of whatever pictures you hold in your mind. Oh, absolutely. So example, so it's not so weird, placebo. What's the placebo? Doctor shows you this is a pill, special, new, best pill ever. This pill is going to heal you. In your mind, you see a picture of a pill. But in your mind, this pill is going to heal you. So you take the pill, the mind releases what? Chemistry of what? Healing. Because this is the pill that's going to heal me. And then you get healed. And later you find out the pill was a sugar pill. I go, then what the heck healed you? And the answer was not the sugar pill. It was the interpretation of the mind about the pill as the healing agent. And therefore, the interpretation releases the healing agents, and we get well. Placebo effect. Everyone knows about it.
Yep.
And we say, oh, yeah, that's a story of positive thinking. That's what it really is. This pill is going to heal me. I have positive thought. Turns out to be a sugar pill. I get healed. Obviously, it wasn't the pill. It was the thought of the pill. And while I bring it up, yes, go ahead, Tim.
And that's actually human nature is we are really living the nocebo effect. That's because like 70,000 thoughts we have on an average a day are either negative or repetitive or actually harmful. And so we're really more conditioned to experience a nocebo life rather than the placebo effect. And when we do experience a placebo effect, we may not hold it long because we go right back to our negative subconscious conditioning, which again is back into the nocebo effect.
Yeah, and the consequence, while everyone focuses on the placebo effect, which is a result of positive thinking, they have not been informed of the reality that negative thinking, nocebo effect as we mentioned, nocebo effect, is equally powerful. So in other words, a positive thought, placebo effect, can heal me. A negative thought actually release chemistry from the brain to manifest the negative experience. So the result is a positive thought can heal me. A negative thought can kill me. It's called a nocebo. and it's unfortunately very true. And I say, well, what does that mean? I say, well, let's say you go to a diagnosis with a medical, person giving you a diagnosis and says, I'm sorry, you got cancer, you're going to die. Guess what? That's big nocebo effect, big one.
Right.
And I go, what's the relevance? The belief system that you just heard is going to take that negative news and turn it into what? Chemistry that will kill you. You will die according to the diagnosis, even though you may not even have the disease in the first place. So the whole emphasis comes down to genes had no control over this, but your perceptions and beliefs of life were turned into chemistry by the mind into the brain. The brain releases that chemistry, which is matching the picture, to the cells, and this chemistry controls the genetics and the behavior of the cells so that your cellular body and your behavior and everything else becomes a complement to the picture you hold in your mind.
Now, my next question, Doctor, or I should call you Bruce, we know why and where and what and how our thoughts affect our health and body. But let's take this conversation outside of our body for a little bit. And we know that our thoughts can travel outside of our heads, basically, to my understanding, by looking at the results, like remote viewing, ESP, even the twins that you mentioned, or a mom that knows something that happened to her child that could be miles or thousands of miles away. But we don't know how it works, my understanding. And if that's accurate, can you share some ideas on how that is possible to begin with?
Well, what's important is this. In our conventional world of conventional medicine, conventional doctoring is based on a concept called Newtonian physics. And you go, what the heck does that mean? Well, from ancient times, people on this planet recognize there's just two realms to our universe. The visible, physical, material, mechanical realm, the things you can see, the things you can touch, the physical body, the drugs, the chemistry, the cells. These are physical and mechanical. But
Right.
It was also recognized there's an invisible realm. There's stuff between you and me in the empty space. And I say, well, what is this stuff? Well, physics has called this the energy realm, that there's invisible information in there. When I talk about energy, we also have to recognize this. People say energy, but energy has two definitions. Energy can be motive power. In other words, do you have the energy, does your car have the energy to drive up the hill? And I go, yeah, it uses fuel, burns fuel. The energy released from that fuel is power and causes it to move. So sometimes we look at energy as power. But I also say, yeah, but look, you're sitting in a room right now and television broadcasts and cell phone broadcasts and radio broadcasts are passing through this room right now wherever you are. It's invisible. It's energy. It's not going to cause your car to drive up the hill. It's information. So I say, then energy has two roles, physical power and information. I go, yes, and here's the problem. The information part has been left out of our science. We look at biology. Oh, you want to adjust the biology? Put a chemical in to affect the chemical body. That's chemical versus chemical in this case. And I say, what about energy? And they go, what are you talking about, energy? Well, in a Newtonian world, you never bring it up. But the problem is physics, the mechanics of the universe, that's why they call it like Newtonian physics or Newtonian mechanics, quantum physics, quantum mechanics. Physics means mechanisms.
Right.
Well, the quantum physics mechanisms reveal that invisible stuff that we've ignored in the Newtonian world, that invisible energy out there.
That makes up
it's not just
of our each cell, yeah.
Oh, it's the most important factor influencing the formation of the cell.
Right.
And we've left it out of the story. And I go, yeah. And as we talked about, as you brought up, your thoughts are energy vibrations, which you can read with, let's say, put wires on your head. We call it electroencephalograph. I could read your brain activity, and I go, great. I can, show you on the chart. Here's how your brain's functioning. There's a new process to read brain function. It's called magnetoencephalograph. Instead of EEG, it's called MEG. And I said, what's relevant? I said, well, it reads brain activity just like EEG, but there's something profoundly different. I go, what is it? The probe to read the brain energy is not touching the human body. The probe is outside your head. And I go, well, what does it mean? Well, fundamentally, it says this. Your thoughts, which are energy of information, are not just contained in your body. They're broadcast into the field. And I say, yeah, but this information not only controls your body, but what about other people's bodies that are in the field as well? Well, an individual person's thought may not affect a lot of people's bodies, but the more people that share the same thought, the more amplification of that thought, that energy, that information. And if enough people have the same thought, even a passerby who is not even interested in that thought will be entrained, they call it, pick up that thought from other people if enough people are doing it. And that's why all of a sudden a mass crowd response occurs. When enough people believe the same thing, it turns our reality into that belief. If it's a positive belief, that's great. If it's a negative belief, then we all suffer at the same time.
Exactly.
And unfortunately,
Doctor, is that some type of signal? Is that some type of signal transduction going on between molecules across thousands of distance? I mean, science isn't there yet, but I mean, there's definitely that's happening. We're seeing it. We see the end result of that collective intention. You know.
But let me give you an experiment that, if you get this experiment, it's mind-blowing. And it goes like this. I take some cells out of your body, Tim. I move it 40 miles away. I have a tissue culture dish with your cells 40 miles away. I put a device to read the electrical activity of the cells, something like a lie detector, electronic activity. And I have you in a room, and your cells are 40 miles away at the same time. And if I elicit an emotional response in you at exactly the same time 40 miles away, your cells will engage in a lot of electrical activity.
Wow.
Say, wait a minute, what does that mean? And it's like, here's what it means, and why is it so profound? No two people are the same biologically, which is demonstrated by a simple fact. If I take my cells out and try to put it into any other human body, the recipient of those cells, their immune system will look at my cells and go, not self, and try to eliminate them because they don't belong to the system. So the immune system will get rid of not self. And I go, oh, wait, but then no two people have the same self. I go, absolutely not, because we can't exchange parts with each other. So I say, well, where is the self that makes two people different from each other? Well, the primary thing is on the surface of our cells are little antennas, like nano TV antennas, picking up broadcasts from the environment. There's a set of these antennas that medicine studies a portion of them, not the whole thing, a portion of these receptors, that's what they're called, that distinguish one person from another. And so, in fact, in medicine they're called self-receptors, receivers of self. I go, yeah, where are these antennas? I say, they're on the outside surface of the cell. Well, then logically, where do you think the signal is going to come from? Not from the inside. It's going to pick up a signal from the outside. And I go, wait, these cells pick up an identity from a signal on the outside. I go, yes, Bruce's cells 40 miles away are not going to respond to anybody else's signature because it's connected to my identity, which is picked up by my cells.
And that's incredible.
Well, yeah. What does it mean? What does it mean? What do we just say if you sat there and just say, what does that mean? What do you get?
What I get is that somehow perhaps protons are communicating with each other, or like right now molecularly we are all connected to each other. As I wave my hand, the air molecules moves. It affects the wall molecules, because everything's vibrating, affects the outside. It affects the ocean you're connected to over in New Zealand. So I'm actually could be interacting with you electrically, and it's really the molecular dance is how we're communicating through thousands of miles and thousands of miles.
It's so specific to this. Your cells respond to you, but they don't respond to anybody else. And that means your cells are picking up a signal from the environment that represents who? You.
Yeah.
I go, wait, but you're not 40 miles away. You're here in the room. I say, yeah, but guess what? Your identity is not located where you are. Your identity is part of the energy of the whole thing.
So it's the collective consciousness. Your collective consciousness. Your consciousness is not bound by our brain or by our skin. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. But okay. So you want to say, a whole long time ago we started with a question: what changed my whole life? And it was that.
Yeah.
What was that? It said, my identity is a broadcast picked up by antennas on the surface of a cell and plays through the cells. Right. My body is the equivalent of a remote control device. The identity that controls my cells is not in my body. My identity is a signal picked up by my self-receptors. And if you stop long enough just to say, well, yeah, but what does that mean? I go, you, me, Jennifer, we're not in our bodies. We are broadcasts picked up by the antennas on our cells that are tuned to my identity or your identity or Jennifer's identity. And I go,
right.
yeah, but what the hell does it finally mean? And it means this. You are not in your body. You are a broadcast. And I say relevance. Well, then consider the body like a television set. In this case, like my body is playing the Bruce show right now.
Right.
And I say, you're watching a TV, and the TV breaks. What do we say about TV? Oh, TV's dead. Yep, picture's gone. Things not working. TV's dead. And then the most important question is, okay, I can see the TV died. Did the broadcast die too? And the answer is, well, no. How do you know? I say, because I can do what? I can get another TV set, plug it in, turn it on, and then tune it to the station, and the show is still on the air. What's the point? My identity, your identity, is not built into the television set called the body. It's a broadcast. Point.
Right.
If you die, did your broadcast die? Did your identity disappear? Did who you are actually die? And the answer is no, you're still the broadcast. Yeah, I can't see you. I can't talk to you. Why? Because we only talk to each other via the television set. And so you're still here. Oh, wait a minute. You can't die. You're not even in here.
Well,
and you know what's interesting?
Go ahead, Doc.
What's that?
Go ahead. You can finish that.
The most interesting point right here is like, it's been now recent because of the numbers of heart transplants that occur, and heart is a major organ because it's a vibrational energy device that sends out vibrational energy fields and receives vibrational energy fields. So it's really connected to our energy.
Right.
When people get a heart from somebody else, obviously, who died, upon receiving that heart, they also pick up characteristics of the person who had that heart, who's dead. Okay, and now how profound? Listen to this one, because this is in the book. There's a whole book, Change of Heart, by Pearsall is one of these books.
Who's supposedly dead, yeah.
And in there's a story about a young girl who got a heart, obviously from somebody who died, got the heart, immediately started having nightmares of being killed. Vivid. Every night, same nightmare. So the doctors finally went back and said, well, where did this heart come from? Well, it came from another young girl who was killed. When the recipient of the heart described the nightmares to the police, they were so vivid, they actually caught the murderer.
Wow. That is crazy.
What's the point? This young girl is dead, but her heart, which is the big energy source, has her antennas on it, her self-antennas. So even though her heart's in another body, it's still receiving the broadcast from the source.
Well, that's
so while the girl is dead, her heart is still downloading her stuff.
Well, that's
we didn't die.
That's circumstantial evidence of the consciousness still existing. I mean, that's the end result of it. You know.
Absolutely, and it says we're immortal spirits, but we come back when a future embryo shows up with the same set of antennas, which is a complex set of these self-receptor antennas. If a future embryo comes up with the same set of antennas you have now, you're back online, but in a different television set. It doesn't make a difference if it's male or female. It doesn't make a difference if it's black, white, yellow, red, brown.
Yeah.
That's the television set. We are not the television. We are the broadcast.
We are the
such a great way to describe it.
And that is brilliant. And Doc, I have a couple more key questions. Is there any way we could hold you over just a little bit, just get some more of my questions? Okay, great.
Yeah.
What I want to do real quick is take a quick 30-second break, and when we get back, I want to talk about our Earth vibrating at what hertz, and what does that mean on a scientific and molecular level for our planet? Okay, we'll be right back.
You are listening to the Good Intentions Show, sponsored by the United Intentions Foundation and UnitedIntentions.org, a virtual community where you learn to create, track, and manifest your passions, one intention at a time.
And we are back with Dr. Bruce Lipton, calling all the way from the beautiful New Zealand land, Taylor. And
Middle Earth, we call it.
Middle Earth.
Middle Earth.
There you go. I hear the Earth, and I just loved about science because I believe science is on the verge of capturing, if not already getting there, like you were describing, the proof or the evidence of a consciousness and how the consciousness is continuous. And we're already seeing the circumstantial evidence, which you've been talking about just recently, in reference to experiments or examples of the heart transplants and so on down the line, that they couldn't exist. Your heart couldn't have electrical responses, 500 miles away with you, unless there was some type of conduit. And the conduit, maybe not, like I said, not being the protons, but the conduit, as you're saying, is being the consciousness, which to me is just fascinating. And I think that's such if not a new field, it needs to have a field describing that specifically. But my understanding, and I really ask these questions because I really don't know fully, and I'm not that I expect you to know the answers, but you're definitely more likely to know than I, so I'm going to ask anyway. I heard a while ago, years ago, Earth was vibrating at 8 hertz, whatever that may mean, and now it's raised up to 12.5 hertz, supposedly. Now, raising the frequency, what does that mean to you on a scientific or molecular level? Is it all the animals and plants or molecules, organic, inorganic, all vibrating at a faster quantum energies, activating more, and it's vibrating at a faster rate? Or what is that? How does collectively Earth have its own hertz? Every planet has its own hertz,
Okay, the first of all is that everything that we see as physical matter is an illusion. And I say that for this reason. You say, yeah, well, it's physical and it's made out of these physical things called atoms. And then we look at atoms and we have a periodic table of elements with all the different atoms and all that kind of stuff like that. And you say, yeah, these are the particles that make up life. And I go, what introduced quantum physics to the world was the fact when they said, what are atoms made out of? And they finally found, well, there are electrons, protons, and neutrons. Well, that was the early days, 1895, when they started to recognize that. But by 1920, they started to recognize, well, yeah, but what are the electrons, protons, and neutrons made out of themselves?
Yeah.
And that's when the world changed, because they started to find there was nothing physical in those so-called particles. They're just like nano-tornadoes, the little force fields of energy. And I say,
right.
Oh, wait, an atom is not made out of anything physical. It's a force field of energy. And I say, well, what is energy? Well, you can't see energy, but I can describe it for you in this regard. If you drop a rock into a pond of water, the energy from the falling rock is translated into the water, and it results in what are called the ripples. And I go, the ripples are the shape of energy. The force of the energy that the rock put into the water, the force of that energy is shaping the molecules of the water into the shape of the energy, which is a wave. So you can't see the physical energy wave, but you can see the expression of the energy in the form of ripples. So energy are ripples, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the vibration energy is how fast the ripples are radiating out from the source. So that's the frequency. And I go, well, why is this relevant? Number one, all atoms are made out of energy. All atoms are ripples in a pond. And therefore, if you looked at the world without light and eyes, but you looked at it with an energy scan, everything would look like, imagine rain falling on a lake. Every drop of water hitting a lake makes ripples. Now I got billions of ripples, but guess what? They're all interconnected. All the ripples, they pass through each other, but they influence each other. So all ripples of energy are connected to each other by definition. Energy is inclusive. There's no energy outside of energy. And I say,
right.
But all atoms are energy. And I say, well, then everything in our physical world is part of one giant energy matrix. I go, yes. And I say, and energy influences energy. And I go, yes, it can. When two ripples come together, they can have two extreme. They have an interaction. I can tell you the two extremes and everything in between. I don't have to describe. Two
right.
ripples can come together, and the ripples cancel each other out. So that as one ripple is going up, and the other ripple is going down. If they overlap, the one going up and the one going down cancel each other out. No ripple at all. So two energies can come together and cancel the vibration out, and that's called. In conventional science term, is called destructive interference. Interference meaning ripple A is interfering with ripple B. Destructive means when the two ripples interact, they cancel each other out. In contrast, two ripples, A and B, come together, but they're both, let's say, both going up at the same time, both going down at the same time. They're in harmony. I say, well, if ripple A is going up and it meets ripple B, which is also going up, then you add up the value of the energy. They're interfering, but now it's not destructive, it's constructive interference. Point. Two energies can come together and enhance each other and make more energy. Or two energies can come together and cancel out each other. In technical terms, constructive, destructive interference. Human terms, because we experience this, is called good vibes, bad vibes. Meaning,
exactly.
sometimes you go to a place where the energy is in harmony with you. Meaning, when its energy is going up, your vibe is going up, and your wave and its wave are together.
I'm feeling it now.
What?
I'm feeling it now, Bruce. It's going up right now. I'll tell you that.
That's the good vibe. That means more energy.
Yeah.
Bad vibes is when two energies come together and cancel each other out. And since vibration is equivalent to life, energy is life. Energy is vibration. Vibration is life. If you cancel the vibrations, that means you cancel life. Oh, yeah, bad vibes. That's what it's all about. Good vibes is, I enhance my energy. I increase my life. Good vibes. So what's the point? Everything vibrates at different frequencies. The earth vibrates at a frequency. All the atoms vibrate at frequencies. There are frequencies that are shared by things. When things share a frequency, then they're in resonance or in harmony with each other. So if I vibrate A and it's in resonance or harmony with B, when I vibrate A, it affects B, okay, in a positive way in this case. So why is this important? There are vibrations in the field. Vibrations can mean either of two things. Force. Yes, it's an energy force that's pushing, or information. So when you talk about the earth vibrating, I can say, well, there's a force associated with that, but there's also information. And if you can read the vibration, you're reading the information. If the earth's vibration is ramping up, it says we're also changing the information pattern. And this is what's going on.
Right.
The world is evolving, and it's evolving everything in it in regard to that vibration. We, as participants in this world, are affected by higher vibrations. And higher vibrations are moving civilization, which is a physical structure. It's causing it to vibrate at a higher speed. Information is changing. The world around us is changing. We're waking up to the reality that the field is telling us we're not in harmony.
Right.
And we're not in harmony. That two energies not in harmony come together. Bad vibes, cancellation, finish.
Destruction,
and this is what the earth is saying to us.
Yeah.
That
that's
we're not living in harmony.
So it's
what's that, Tim?
Each of our individual cells, not just within our human body, but in everything in the planet, is increasing in vibration because of the quantum energy.
It's not necessarily increasing, but it is reading different vibration. And if vibration is information, then it says there's different information coming in now than earlier. And that some people are more sensitive to the vibration, so they pick up on the message earlier than others. So there's a transitioning where people at the fringe are, wow, this new vibe, I'm getting it. And mainstream people is like completely don't feel it at all. But as we become more sensitive, more and more, and the vibration gets louder, more powerful, then those that didn't hear it in the beginning will start to hear it. And so what we see is a transition. There are people that hear these vibrations early in the game and change their world, change their life, change their behavior, change their teaching, and try to keep up with the new vibration. Then there's a large number of people who are slow to pick up on the vibration, so they're still living in an older vibrational information period. And yet, as the new vibes pick up power, amplitude, more people hear it, more people respond to it, then those that weren't responding before will become entrained because of the amplitude of the new frequency to pick it up. So in other words, we're in an evolution. Some of us have seen the evolution before it actually is manifesting because they were more sensitive to the vibration.
Sure.
The mass of the population.
We're going to preview, right?
If you've seen it early, you can say, wow, oh my God, the life is not the same as I thought it was. This new information says I could do this, and if I change my life, which I did personally, change my life to accommodate the vibration, guess what? all of a sudden I am healthier and happier, and my life is working out better. Why? Because I'm reading the information more correctly.
Right.
This higher information than I was when I was not hearing that information. Our thoughts are not contained in our head. They're broadcast to the field. As more people pick up what's going on in the field, the more alignment people have with the world and harmony. What we're beginning to realize now that the vibrations that are in the field, the vibrations we're picking up, are basically what you would collectively call bad vibes, which are energies that are breaking us apart, which are causing illness on the planet and causing social disruption. And that as we start to tune into the higher vibrational frequency and get new knowledge, because remember, the energy is information. As we pick up on the new information, we can change the way we live on this planet. And so we are in a state of evolution right now where new information is coming in. Old information that has held us as victims is in the process of being replaced. Now the question is, where are you in the population? If you're stuck with the old belief system, then you're stuck with a belief system that generates the illnesses and the problems we have on the planet. It's a generation of separation. It's an information that we are individuals and there's no energy involved. We're just physical, mechanical pieces on a game board that we play the game and you die and then the pieces turn back into dust and that was your life. And that old information is giving way to the new vibration that says, no, you are not the game piece. You are the vibration. Relevance of being the vibration is that you're the one that can change the outcome because the cells respond to your thoughts, and your thoughts are translated into the chemistry, as we talked about, which control your life. New thoughts, new information, new biology, new energy offers, by definition, an entirely new life. And when we look at the world right now, it's very important to understand this. It looks scary. It's like, oh, my God, pick up the newspaper, turn on the TV news, whatever, and it's like, oh, my God, crisis after crisis after crisis. This will perpetuate a fear. Because if you fear, oh my God, my life is threatened by all these crises, then you're going to live in fear, and fear shuts down the system, and that's really where the stress and illness comes from. I just want people to understand that the crises that we face, it looks like bad news, but here's the issue. The crisis or crises that we face are the good news in what looks like bad news. Simple reason is this. Crisis says you cannot continue doing what you've been doing because it's causing a problem. And the crises that the world is facing right now is a wake-up call to humanity. It says the way you have been living on this planet, your belief system, the way you influence the environment and the world around you is so out of harmony with life that you're destroying the environment, and you have to own this. You are the environment. So when you destroy the environment, it's actually self-destruction. And so we are now in a stage of looking at the scary stuff, and I'm going, well, you can get caught up and stay in the scary state of mind, or you can look at it and say, the way we've been living is not in harmony. It is self-destructive. We're killing the environment. We're killing ourselves. We must step outside. We must operate by new information, new awareness, new knowledge. Knowledge is power. The new knowledge is you are more than this body. You are a creator. And the creation aspect is not even a new idea in terms of science, because when quantum physics came in 1925 and 1930, the physicists who introduced quantum physics to the world stated clearly, emphatically, that we perceive of life as a physical mechanical machine when the new quantum physics reveals that life is more a thought. It's an energy. It's a consciousness. And all of a sudden it says, keep your mind focused on the fact that it's all energy and consciousness because that's what's creating our life. So rather than focusing on the mechanical material, the emphasis of our evolution is to change our consciousness. As we change our consciousness and vibrate at the higher vibrational frequency, we'll be then in harmony with the world around us. That good vibe is what will sustain us, in contrast to the bad vibes that are creating the situation right now. So it looks bad, But that looking bad is the most important step of our evolution. We must stop this and live in a different way. And the new science is offering that. I know that what you're doing is really facilitating what I'm doing, and both of us are doing what? Creating a base of new knowledge, and that your program is very critical because it really talks about the fact that our intentions are not just little ideas that float inside of our head. Our intentions are broadcasts that go out into the field. As quantum physicists said, our consciousness is manifesting the world in front of us. Our intentions are an expression of that consciousness. If we really work with our intentions as mechanisms of creating life, then we're actually empowering ourselves to manifest this life. We can be healthy if we keep all those positive placebo thoughts in our mind, or we can die of cancer with just nothing more than the negative nocebo beliefs. And then all of a sudden it says, we are not victims, which we have been programmed to believe. That our intentions and our consciousness are the driving force of not just our own individual lives, but collectively all humans and all human intentions are the driving force that determine life on this planet. And that your show about universal, just the idea of intentions is the doorway to self-empowerment. So while I can't really get the questions done that you're asking, I can assure you this: asking the questions that you ask, providing the show that you provide, is one of the most powerful influences on changing our planet. When people begin to own, they're not just passive pieces in a game where everything is controlling them. Each one of us, by definition of science, epigenetics, quantum physics, signal transduction experiments, all of these studies reveal that we are co-creators. And when we understand our role in this planet as co-creators, this will then lead to a change of how we relate to each other, how we relate to the environment and nature. And why is this necessary? Because the way we have been doing it up to now is self-destruction, and intentions of a new vision and a new way of life and positive thinking become very important. And yet, as biology of belief says, it takes a little bit more than intention, because intention is the consequence of a conscious, creative mind. When the science reveals that most of us, because we think all day with our conscious mind, are actually running our biology with subconscious programs, because the subconscious is like the autopilot. When the conscious mind is having a good thought, a good intention, it's not paying attention to what's going on. The conscious mind is in the head. And I say, well, then when we're thinking, then what controls our biology? And I go, autopilot, subconscious programs that we got from other people. And so having a good intention is really important, but recognizing we must put those intentions into our subconscious programs, so that because subconscious runs, according to science, 95% of the show. And if our subconscious programs don't match our intentions, then we're going to have difficulty manifesting intentions. And so intentions, A, are most important. B, we must then learn to reprogram our biology to make the intentions part of the autopilot, so that even if we're not paying attention, our subconscious is going to take us to these intentions. That's when full power is realized. And this is why your program and the new science are so critical at this time, because it's time to take those intentions and manifest them, and not just keep them turning around inside of our head and not getting them out.
Dr. Lipton, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and spending this time and going over and spending this extra time, as well as sharing your insight on life and how people how we can live and in a harmonious way in tough times and in an environment that may not seem harmonious on its surface. So that really resonates, I think, with our listeners, and definitely resonates with me. So I want to thank you again for everything. I hope you have a wonderful time. Thanks again.
Tim, Jennifer, thank you both. I want to thank the listeners, because every one of the listeners out there is a cultural creative, a person who is looking for answers to get us out of the hole that we've dug. And so everybody on the line is part of the solution. And I appreciate everyone listening, because it is now time for us to actually make the difference that we can think about. Good day, everyone. Love you.
You have been listening to The Good Intention Show on the UI Radio Network. The Good Intention Show is sponsored by the United Intentions Foundation at unitedintentions.org. Look for us on Blog Talk, Spreaker, iTunes, Stitcher, Player FM, and many more. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram under United Intentions, and on Twitter at Higher Intention. Be sure to log on to unitedintentions.org, a virtual community where you learn to create, track, and manifest your passions, one intention at a time.